This story isn't about a viral clip. It's about what happens after the cameras stop recording. Because when people recognized Tylor Chase on the streets of California, most reactions focused on one question: how did this happen? But that question misses the point. The more uncomfortable truth is this: the system didn't fail once, it kept repeating the same response, over and over, while nothing actually changed. And that's why this situation looks frozen in time. The video itself was simple: a man walking the streets of Riverside, California, a fan asking a familiar question, a recognizable answer. According to publicly available footage, Tylor Chase calmly confirmed that he once appeared on Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide, a Nickelodeon show that aired from 2004 to 2007. No dramatic confrontation, no outburst, just recognition, and then silence. That silence is important, because viral moments create the illusion that something new has been discovered, when in reality, the situation had been unfolding quietly for years. And according to local authorities, this wasn't a surprise case. So, if law enforcement already knew who he was, and if help was already offered, why does the situation look exactly the same? According to statements from the Riverside Police Department's public information officer, officers were aware of Chase's condition. Publicly available information indicates that multiple forms of assistance were offered, including mental health services, substance use treatment options, temporary shelter. Each offer, according to those statements, was reportedly declined. This detail matters, not as blame, but as context, because the system is designed to respond only if consent is given, unless someone meets very specific legal criteria, and that creates a standstill. But here's where the story becomes more complicated. Declining help doesn't mean help isn't needed. So, what happens when someone falls into the gap between available resources and actual outcomes? Court records from Riverside County show that since August 2023, Chase has been involved in multiple legal cases. According to those records, there have been 12 criminal cases, total 8 of them occurred within the past year. The most recent cases reportedly involve allegations related to shoplifting items valued under $950 and being under the influence of a controlled substance. It's important to note that these cases are ongoing. Authorities clarified that he was not actively wanted for crimes at the time he was seen, and during interactions with police, he was described as cordial and cooperative. That description doesn't match the public image many people expect, and that contrast is the key to understanding why the situation hasn't resolved. Because cooperation doesn't equal recovery, and awareness doesn't equal intervention. So, why does this keep repeating? From the outside, it looks like people stepped in. Former co-stars reached out. Influencers tried to help. A fundraiser was even launched. But, according to reports, that fundraiser was requested to be taken down by Chase's mother. Her reasoning, shared in alleged text messages, was direct. Money wouldn't solve the problem. Medical care was needed. And he reportedly refused it. This introduces a difficult reality that rarely gets discussed online. Sometimes help exists, but it doesn't stick. And when help doesn't stick, the internet often fills the gap with something else: judgment, speculation, and oversimplified conclusions. But the real issue is much quieter. According to public interviews, Chase's father later stated that his son had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder and schizophrenia, and that the family had been seeking treatment options for over a decade. He reportedly described periods of progress entry into rehab in 2021 and later discontinuation of medication again. These are claims shared through media interviews and should be understood as one perspective, not a full medical record. But taken together, they point to something important. This isn't a sudden collapse. It's a long cycle. and cycles don't break on their own. So what happens when even well-intentioned help becomes temporary? According to multiple reports, former co-star Daniel Curtis Lee helped arrange a motel stay for Chase ahead of severe weather. The intention was practical: a safe place, time to stabilize, protection from the elements. But shortly after, the motel room was reportedly damaged. This moment became another headline, another viral talking point. But again, it didn't change the outcome. At this stage, the pattern is clear. Authorities offer help is declined or interrupted, short-term solutions fail, the situation resets, and the public keeps asking why. Without asking why, nothing changes. To understand why this story keeps looping, you have to understand how intervention actually works. In most US jurisdictions, adults can refuse treatment unless they meet very strict legal standards. Being homeless isn't enough. Struggling publicly isn't enough. Even repeated police contact often isn't enough. According to publicly available explanations from mental health professionals, forced intervention usually requires immediate danger, not long-term decline. So, the system doesn't move early, it waits. And waiting is built into the process. That raises a difficult question. What happens to people who are clearly deteriorating, but not fast enough to trigger intervention? In Tylor Chase's case, awareness was never the problem. Police knew who he was. Former co-stars recognized the warning signs. Family members reportedly understood the stakes. But awareness doesn't grant authority. Law enforcement officers can offer services, not enforce recovery. Friends can provide shelter, not stability. Families can advise, not control. Every step depends on consent, and when consent is inconsistent, outcomes become unstable. So, when people online ask, why doesn't someone just help him? The uncomfortable answer is, many already tried. Short-term solutions look good on camera. A motel room, a meal, a fundraiser, a viral update promising hope. But, according to specialists in recovery and crisis response, temporary fixes can sometimes delay real intervention. Why? Because they reduce immediate pressure without addressing the underlying condition. When the room is gone, the cycle resumes. When the money disappears, the situation resets. When the attention fades, so does accountability. And attention always fades. But the problem doesn't. Viral moments compress complex situations into seconds. A clip, a caption, a reaction. But real recovery doesn't happen on that timeline. According to experts who work with high-profile individuals in crisis, sudden attention can increase stress, reinforce denial, create distrust of institutions, make individuals feel observed rather than supported. In this case, public recognition didn't bring clarity, it brought noise. And noise makes coordination harder, not easier. That's why even well-meaning help can collapse under attention. So, what about medical intervention? Reports indicate that after intervention from concerned individuals and a crisis center evaluation, Chase was hospitalized and placed on a 72-hour hold. This step often sounds decisive, but in practice, it's a pause, not a solution. A short-term hold is designed to assess immediate risk, not to guarantee long-term care. Once the hold ends, the same rules apply. Consent matters, compliance matters, follow-through is voluntary. Without sustained agreement, the cycle can restart almost immediately. So if emergency measures aren't enough, and long-term care requires consent, where does that leave cases like this? Family statements suggest years of effort, multiple treatment attempts, and periods of progress. But family involvement has boundaries. Parents can't legally enforce treatment for adult children. They can't manage medication daily. They can't prevent relapse once independence resumes. And, according to public interviews, even financial support was considered ineffective, not because of lack of care, but because of inability to manage resources consistently. This is why Chase's mother reportedly insisted that money wouldn't help, not out of detachment, but out of experience. And this is where the public narrative often breaks down, because people expect a turning point. But some stories don't have one. This case isn't unique, but it's often misunderstood. Former child actors don't fail because of fame. They struggle when structure disappears faster than support systems evolve. Early success doesn't teach long-term stability. Recognition doesn't prepare someone for anonymity. And public memory freezes people in a version of themselves that no longer exists. When personal struggles appear later, the contrast becomes jarring and viral. But the conditions that created the situation usually formed long before the camera returned. So, if this isn't about one person, and it isn't about one bad decision, what is it really about? At its core, this story exposes a structural reality. Modern systems are built to respond to emergencies, not slow decline. They activate at crisis points. They disengage during unstable calm. They repeat the cycle. As long as intervention depends on visible collapse, prevention remains optional. And that's why stories like this feel unfinished. Nothing here suggests a lack of care. Nothing suggests indifference. And nothing suggests a simple fix. What it suggests is something harder to accept. Sometimes everyone does something, and it's still not enough. When stories like this resurface, the public reaction is almost predictable. People ask, why didn't someone step in sooner? Why doesn't he just accept help? Why would anyone let this happen? But those questions assume there was a single moment where everything could have been fixed. According to professionals who work in long-term recovery and crisis management, situations like this rarely hinge on one decision. They unfold through hundreds of small breaks in continuity. Support starts, then pauses. Treatment begins, then stops. Structure appears, then disappears. The public wants a culprit. The reality is a system built on interruptions. And that's why outrage fades faster than the problem. Blame offers closure. If there's someone responsible, the story feels complete. If there's a failure, the lesson feels learned. But in cases involving mental health, addiction, and long-term instability, blame rarely explains outcomes. Responsibility is spread thin. Across institutions with limited authority, across families with limited control, across individuals with fluctuating capacity, no single actor holds enough power to guarantee change. And that's uncomfortable because it means there is no clean ending. So, why do these stories still matter? This isn't a cautionary tale about fame. It's a case study in how modern systems handle prolonged instability. It shows what happens when help is conditional intervention, is temporary recovery, requires sustained consent. The result isn't resolution, it's repetition. And repetition looks like neglect, even when it isn't. One detail rarely mentioned in headlines is tone. According to statements from authorities, Tylor Chase was consistently described as calm, cooperative, and non-confrontational during interactions. That matters, because systems respond fastest to chaos, not quiet decline. When someone deteriorates without causing disruption, urgency drops, not because the need is smaller, but because the thresholds aren't crossed. And that's the paradox at the center of this story. Even recent reports of hospitalization and planned rehabilitation shouldn't be framed as a turning point. Recovery, according to experts, is rarely linear. Progress may look like temporary stability, partial engagement, repeated setbacks. The absence of a dramatic transformation isn't failure, it's the norm. But norms don't go viral. Unless systems change how they handle long-term decline, stories like this will return. Not because people stop caring, but because care alone doesn't restructure outcomes. As long as intervention waits for collapse and recovery depends entirely on consent, the cycle remains intact. And public attention will keep arriving late. This story doesn't end with a verdict. It ends with a clearer picture. Not of a fallen star, but of a system that reacts instead of prevents. If this situation feels unresolved, that's because it is. And in the next video, we'll zoom out even further to examine why modern support systems are built this way, what would actually need to change, and why those changes rarely happen.